Beyond the edge of all known maps, past lands forgotten by time itself, the library rises like a monument to some impossible order. Endless rows of shelves stretch upward into darkness, twisting and folding in ways that defy geometry. Some shelves vanish around corners that bend reality, folding space upon itself. A faint mist lingers between the aisles, thick and heavy, carrying memories of countless unseen visitors. Each step echoes strangely, not in sound, but in sensation, as if the floor itself remembers every footstep that was never taken. Shadows pool in corners, stretching unnaturally, and glimmers of light reflect off surfaces that shouldn't exist. The air smells faintly of old paper and cold stone, though nothing human has ever breathed here. Somewhere deep within, a presence watches silently, aware of every glance, every moment of hesitation, recording it into the memory of the library itself. Books drift off shelves without touch, turning pages with a subtle motion that cannot be traced. Letters shift under scrutiny, forming words that vanish the instant comprehension seems possible. They whisper, faintly, the knowledge of worlds that have never existed, histories that were never written, lives that were never lived. Sometimes the books align in patterns, forming sequences or shapes that hint at meaning, yet the mind cannot follow. Shelves creak softly as if adjusting to accommodate the flow of knowledge, and the mist thickens where the movement is heaviest. It's as though the library itself has a pulse, a rhythm that dictates the dance of floating volumes. Soft illumination drifts from nowhere in particular. It glows along the edges of shelves, across floorboards, and through cracks in walls that appear and disappear without reason. Shadows stretch and bend independently of the objects they touch, forming shapes reminiscent of long-forgotten forms, sometimes humanoid, sometimes utterly alien. The light itself seems aware, lingering where attention is focused, retreating where curiosity fades. Glimpses of the shelves reveal impossible architectures, staircases folding into themselves, corridors that loop back in ways that seem to defy logic. Walking through this illumination creates a feeling of being both observed and observed upon, as if the library itself were conscious. Corridors twist and intersect without pattern. Some appear infinite, stretching endlessly into the distance. Others fold inward, reflecting themselves in impossible mirrors that create the sensation of being in many places at once. Floors slope unpredictably. Walls lean outward or inward subtly, disorienting any attempt to track movement. Even footsteps seem to echo differently in each hallway. Not in volume, but in rhythm, as if time itself bends differently in each segment. Observers feel both lost and discovered simultaneously, aware that the library records every motion, yet nothing ever seems truly new. Walls are etched with faint, glowing symbols that seem alive. They are not letters or language as humans understand it, but impressions pressed into stone. Emotions, memories, curiosities, and fears all condensed into abstract forms. Watching them too long creates a subtle pressure in the mind, an uneasy fascination that is difficult to resist. Mist swirls around these markings, emphasizing their unnatural glow. Occasionally, the symbols rearrange themselves when unnoticed, hinting at the library's awareness and subtle manipulation of perception. Some rooms are perfectly still, yet vibrations hum softly through the floor and walls. The library reacts to the presence of observers. Shelves shift, angles subtly adjust, and paths through aisles alter just enough to create uncertainty. Even standing in a single spot for long periods causes minor changes in the environment. The mist thickens or recedes depending on attention, forming ghostly shapes that vanish when looked at directly. Every inch of this space seems alive, attentive, aware, and constantly adapting. Floating staircases twist impossibly in midair, rising and folding upon themselves with no visible support. Climbing them leads to floors that shouldn't exist and corridors that mirror each other infinitely. Gravity seems optional in certain spaces, with books or objects drifting upwards or sideways. No matter how carefully one tries to map the library, paths rearrange themselves. Corridors appear and vanish, making navigation an exercise in futility. The staircases sometimes glow faintly, highlighting intricate carvings that suggest a history impossible to interpret. Books whisper faintly, not in audible words but in impressions. Feelings, fleeting images, and abstract memories pass through the air. Sometimes the whispers form coherent narratives that dissolve before the mind fully grasps them. The mist carries these echoes, and they press gently against perception. They are histories that never happened, lives that never existed, yet they feel as real as any memory. Observers feel drawn into them, caught between fascination and unease, compelled to follow where the whispers guide. Even when the path itself disappears, some corners appear empty, yet shadows linger, subtly shifting as if aware. Occasionally, they form vague silhouettes, indistinct and fleeting, never fully humanoid, never fully alien. Their presence is felt more than seen, an unspoken reminder that the library is not truly empty. Observers may sense eyes upon them, or feel a subtle alignment of space itself, as if the environment acknowledges their observation. Time behaves erratically here. Seconds can stretch into hours. Hours condense into moments, and entire corridors seem to exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously. The library records all passage of time, yet visually remains unchanged. Observers feel a continuous tension, knowing that while their perception moves forward, the library itself exists outside of time's flow. This temporal distortion adds to the disorientation, making each step unpredictable, each glance uncertain. In some halls, books glow with impossible light. Pages ripple as though alive, displaying abstract shapes, shifting letters, and forms that evoke long-forgotten events or unrealized possibilities. Observers feel drawn to them, their gaze unintentionally lingering. The glow illuminates the surrounding mist, creating silhouettes that flicker and stretch. The effect is mesmerizing, unnerving, and beautiful, emphasizing the library's awareness and control over perception. Shelves bend and corridors fold as though breathing. Angles shift slightly when observed, and previously clear paths may vanish when glanced at again. The architecture is alive, responding to observation, adjusting subtly to maintain an order comprehensible only to itself. Floating objects, shifting floors, and corridors that duplicate, infinitely reinforce the sense that the library exists on its own terms. At the very center lies a vast atrium open to darkness above. No ceiling is visible. Shelves tower endlessly downward. Shadows drift independently of light, creating faint forms reminiscent of beings without bodies. The air is dense with mist and subtle vibrations that echo unseen histories. Observers feel weightless here, caught between awe and unease, understanding that they are part of a larger, incomprehensible record. Finally, one truth becomes undeniable. The library exists not for those who enter, but for itself. It records, observes, and remembers. Shadows linger, whispers persist, and shelves adjust silently. Every glance, every hesitation, every movement is noted. The library is eternal, aware, and infinite, awaiting those who will never arrive, yet never ceasing in its quiet, meticulous vigilance.